Stretch bracelets are so much fun to make. People are always worried about how long they're going to last though. And of course they're not going to last you forever because it's elastic. An elastic doesn't last forever. But there are things that you can do to make it last longer. And one of the things is a lot of people like to use a doubled cord in their Stretch Magic bracelet. It's not Stretch Magic. That's one of the cords that you can use to double, but in their stretch bracelet. I have a couple of bracelets on my wrist right here that I have done doing a single cord. So I do have a video already on how to make a very simple and easy stretch bracelet, and I will pop a link up so that you can go view the original if you want. And then what I'm going to show you now is how to, just an alternate method of making them. I suggest that you try them both, see which one you like better. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's just really what method you prefer, what materials you prefer to work with, and your comfort level with, you know, the outcome of your stretch bracelet. So one thing that I wanted to mention is with your stretch bracelets, this is just kind of a general tip that I was just thinking about as I put these on for the video, is I don't like to pull it out to take it off my wrist. Roll these on and off your wrists, because then you're not making it stretch any more than it absolutely has to. Rolling it on and off is going to be one of those things that's going to save your bracelet and let it last even longer. Okay, so I highly suggest the rolling technique for putting them on. Come on down here to my bead board and I'm going to show you what materials we're going to use today. You have got options on which kind of stretchy material cord that you're going to use. You can use Stretch Magic. Unless you're using a bead that has quite a large hole, you're going to want to use the 0.5 millimeter Stretch Magic. Getting the doubled strand through, Stretch Magic has a very rounded profile that you cannot flatten down. And so sometimes if you're using a 0.7 or a 0.8 or the 1 millimeter size, unless you have a really large hole for that to go through doubled, you're gonna have trouble getting it through. So for most bracelets, you're gonna wanna go with the 0.5 millimeter if you're using Stretch Magic. Opalon is another option. This particular cord happens to be black. I wanted to use black for the video today to make it a little bit easier to see, but it also comes in a white. And one of the things about Opalon is it has a flat cord. It has fibers in it, so you can sometimes see those fibers, but because it's a flat cord, you can go up to the 0.7 millimeter size for this technique. It also comes in a 0.5 millimeter. So just FYI, you can use either one with this technique. And then the last option here is the Miyuki elastic beading cord. This is going to be your thinnest cord. This is more similar to the Opalon than it is to the Stretch Magic in that it is a flat cord that has some fibers in it. So if you're using beads that have particularly small holes, then I would suggest going with the Miyuki elastic beading cord. So for today, I'm using the Opalon, and I've already cut a piece for myself here. The way you're going to determine how much you need is you need it to go around your wrist twice, and then I like to have like almost another full amount around my wrist, because we're going to have to be tying knots and kind of doing some manipulation. I personally hate running out of cord, so I'm one of these who overestimates. So around your wrist twice, and then a little bit extra is what you need to tie the knots. You're going to need beads for your bracelet. So whether it's, in this case, these were all beads from a glass bead mix that I carry at jillwisemandesigns.com. In this particular one, it was beads from a bead mix. That's all these guys, these bigger ones. But then I also added in like these check glass wheel beads I added in some Tierra cast metal spacers, and then you can see that I added in some size 8 seed beads also to kind of extend the mix a little bit. It also gives, you can see the difference here, how those seed beads kind of gives your eye a little bit of a place to rest and makes each one of the beads, bigger beads, more of a focal piece, where here you don't have that resting place. So it's just, you know, sometimes you might want this look, sometimes you might want this look, but size 8 or size 6 seed beads work great with this technique. And for this sample that I'm going to work on right now, I have these gorgeous vintage beads from my personal stash. These are vintage check beads, and then these are just some fire polish, a gorgeous metallic mix of fire polish beads that I'm going to put in between them. And I thought this would be a fun stretch bracelet. So then the last thing that you're going to need is a big eye needle. And we sell them here in the two and a what is that, a 1/4 inch size. They also come in really much longer sizes. I find this size much easier to work with, and so that's why we only carry the smaller versions of these. You can either buy them individually, so one comes on a card, or we also sell them in a set of 4, and you can get them either way. Now we are going to do something unique to this big eye needle. Big eye needles are 2 pieces of steel that are welded together at the top and the bottom. So if you take your fingernail and get in there, that center opens like an accordion. That's why they call it the big eye needle, because now you've got this big eye to poke your cord through. But in this case, we actually don't want to use it in this original shape. What we are going to do is you're going to take a wire cutter, and if you have memory wire cutters, those are great to use. You want to use some kind of heavy duty wire cutters because we're going to cut the tip off of one of your needles. So one side, you're going to cut the tip off. And I happen to have one that's already cut. When you cut that off, make sure that you put it under the table or wear safety glasses, put your hand over it, something, because that tip is going to go flying and you don't want it to fly up into your face and cause a problem, cause injury. So here you can see that I've cut this tip off, and so now we've got this V shape going on here. And that's exactly what we need for this technique. Just as a matter of information, some people call this technique the Tricky Ricky knot. This is something that I've seen used in other mediums. So there's probably an official knot terminology for this, but in the beading world, it seems to be called the Tricky Ricky knot, and that's what the technique that we're going to be using today. So now I'm going to take this piece of Opalon, and this is just a personal preference on my part. You do not have to do this, but I like to tie these 2 ends together. We're going to have to cut this knot off later, so you don't want it to be too far up the cord. I like it to be down close to the end here, and just give that a nice tug, tighten that up. That's, like I said, that's just a personal preference, so just remember that anything below the knot is going to be waste. Then we're going to take this V-shaped needle, open it up, like so. And we're going to find the center here and loop that in to the center, like so. And this is how we are going to now string all of our beads. So you're going to you see that we've got the double length going through all of the beads. So we get to do that double length in one fell swoop. We don't have to go through them all once and then go through them all again. In this case, we're bringing that double cord through a single time. And I'm going to start out with one of the big beads here. Because the tip is open like that, you kind of need to hold the 2 ends together closed. And then you'll just pull it down and onto your cord. And like I said, I'm going to put one of these fire polish in between each one of these. And because we're using that double cord, you're going to have to use a little bit more hand strength to kind of pull it down, depending on how big the hole is, because you're getting resistance from that doubled cord. All right. One of the nice parts about working with beads this big is that it doesn't take long to string. I don't even have to do a Barbie sample. I get to do a real size sample, a Jill size sample in a video for a change. I love this metallic mix because there's just so many different beautiful colors in it. So I'm kind of trying to grab them all. Okay, oops. Oh, my knot came off. Well, there you go. Like I said, it's not necessary. We'll just bring it down to the end here. This time I won't actually pull it off the end. And let me check the sizing on this. Let's see where we're at. All right, it looks like one more unit, one more repeat, and this will be perfect. So I won't have to use all of the beads, just I'll have one left over for a project in the future. All right, like so. Now let's just double check that one more time. And yes, that will be perfect. You can see where this will come up right like so. And you know, I almost wish that I had one more fire polish. So I have the choice here. I can either add an extra fire polish, which I think I'm going to do. So the two fire polish will be sitting next to each other to get the sizing just right, and I'm okay with that. That's just a personal preference thing on your part, whether that will drive you crazy or not. All right, so now I'm going to be much happier with that, how that's going to come together. It won't seem too tight around my wrist. Okay, so at this point, we're actually going to slide these up. We're going to, so that we just leave just a little loop of this cord up here at the top. So we're going to slide everything back up. And I like to leave my needle in for this part because I don't want to accidentally pull the cord through these beads as I'm doing this. There we go. All right. Can do just a little more cinching up. Like so. Okay, now let me get these out of the way because now what we're doing is knotting. At this point, you can remove that needle from that little loop, or you can leave it in while you thread one of these two ends. You only need one of them. Oh, I didn't lose my knot. It just went over the knot. Okay, so one of these two ends, you're going to pass through that loop. Now we're not going to lose that loop. So now I will go ahead and remove the needle. And at this point, we're going to tie a knot. And we're going to take these two cords and kind of cinch this up, tighten on this end, on this end. As we tighten the knot, we will end up losing that little loop that we're going through, which is exactly what we want. So right over left, and then pass through and bring that down and tighten. And this is where we're gonna give it a good tug, trying to get everything nice and sucked up so that we don't have extra cord showing. And yet I don't want to get it too tight where the beads won't bend nicely. So we're actually really good right there. So when I started out my square knot, I did right over left first. So this time we're going to do left over right and then pass through that loop. And we will tighten down again. Nice and secure. Then it's up to you whether you want to do an additional set of knots. I generally do right over left again and tighten, and then left over right and tighten. And then at this point, all that's left is to put a dab of glue on it. And you have choices for what kind of glue that you want to use. My personal preference is to use the GS Hypo Cement. You can also use E6000. You can use one of the super glue kind of glues. This is pretty, I really don't know of any glues that are no-nos for a stretchy cord bracelet. So that doesn't mean that I won't find one, but for right this moment, I don't know of any no-nos. So with the Hypo Cement, you have a little needle-like piece that's attached to the cap that goes into a little hollow tube that's attached to the tube of the glue, and that's where the glue comes out. And so getting the cap back on and getting that little needle protrusion into that tube can be a little bit challenging. So the way I do it is I make sure that when I go to put the cap back on, that I am supporting the tube, the hollow tube there, with my finger, and that will help me get that, and it will help me like slide the needle back into that tube, find the tip of that tube. The other thing about that tube in there is that there, at the very tip, there's a little V notch at the top. And if you can visually see that V notch and put that towards the top, then it's a little bit easier for you to get that needle to slide back in again. So let me demonstrate how all this works. So here is the needle that came out of the tip here. You can see that the glue is already starting to ball up on there. So we're going to open this up, kind of stretch it out so that I can get the glue right on the knot. The knot is actually already pulled into one of the beads here. So I'm going to just kind of get that whole area nice and secure. Then this is where I would need to get the tip back into the, there we go. So supporting it with your finger as opposed to trying to do it out like here makes a huge difference in your ability to get that needle into that tube. It's really a game changer. Okay, so then here we're just going to cut off the ends. And like I said, in this particular case, let me make sure that I didn't get glue on my scissors when I did that, because the knot had already kind of pulled into one of the beads, but just to make sure, I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to tug it a little bit. I felt a little bit of a kind of a jolt, a give, and so now I know for sure it's inside one of those beads, and now I just have to have the patience to let that glue dry. Ideally, you want to have 12 to 24 hours before you wear the bracelet to let that glue get nice and solid. I know some of you are not going to want to wait that long, but like I said, ideally 12 to 24 hours, let the glue really do its job, and that's the Tricky Ricky knot, and it's a great way to get a double cord through there with one passive thread, and it's a nice, secure, peace of mind kind of way of doing a stretchy cord bracelet. So I hope you get to make lots and lots of these, and like I said, try out the different techniques, see which one works best for you, see which materials you like best. That's exactly what I did when I got all of these videos ready to film. Is I just sat there and spent 2 days making stretchy bracelets in different materials, different cords, different glues, different techniques, and kind of figured out what worked best for me. And that's exactly what I hope you get to do too. Happy beading!